As they say, it's not so much what you do, but how you do it. And when it comes to building muscle and strength, that's entirely true. Because ultimately, it's not whether you're using free weights or machines or bands or calisthenics. The only requirement for a method to be effective for building muscle and strength is progressive resistance. If you've got that, it's as good and as effective as it can possibly be from the equipment and tool side of things. Instead, what really determines your success is how well you can use it. And that's why I created the grind style strength training methodology, because it's an approach that helps you overcome a lot of the limitations that block you from developing the proficiency you need to get the most out of the tools that you're using, whatever that is. Now, of course, I first developed the grind style approach to be used with calisthenics, which is my main modus operandi when it comes to strength training, but you can use this with anything. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to apply the grind style workout strategy to basic programming for working out with classic external loads like free weights and machines. So our first order of business is, of course, activation, warming up and getting that coveted mind-muscle connection to fire up, because ultimately your ability to effectively work a muscle depends on how well you can engage it in the first place. And if you're having trouble engaging that muscle, well, nothing you do is ever going to be effective. But once you get that engagement higher, everything you do is more effective. So we're going to be doing a back and biceps workout for today. And engagement is best often done with an isometric. I've got a simple cable set up here, and with a moderate load. It doesn't need to be very high. And all we're going to do is we're going to have an isometric pull, and we want to keep the load fairly low, because the heavier we get, the more we kind of go back to default neuromuscular activation patterns. So if I'm not used to using my traps very much and I'm rowing like this, as I get heavier, it's just going to reinforce whatever bad habits I have. So as I pull back, I'm focusing on engaging my biceps, my forearms, I'm squeezing my lats, my traps, my shoulders. I'm basically mentally checking through all of the muscles in my pull chain and making sure I am engaging them, turning them on, and holding for about 10 seconds or so, whatever you feel is prudent to get things engaged. You're not working this just yet. It's not supposed to feel like a workout. You're just kind of turning things on, maybe adjusting our position of our hands a little bit. Be mindful of discrepancies between your right and left side. Like, okay, maybe I've got some elevation on my right or left side, so getting things balanced, feeling good. And once you feel like things are kind of turning on and woken up, then we move on to our second phase of our training. So once you've got things woken up and engaged, now we work on our stability training, because you're only as strong as you are stable. And for this, band work can be particularly helpful and handy. And whereas before you were using isometrics, now you want to get a lot of movement in your muscles and joints to kind of build up what I call a wider base of strength. So I'm moving my shoulders back and forward, up and down, maybe getting a row, rolling the shoulders around a little bit. We want to make sure that you're developing some confidence and stability and not just one static or narrow range of motion. You want to have the ability to engage the muscles in big ranges. This is good sometimes for mobility training and getting used to engaging things through a big range of motion. So we're working on our range of tension, not just range of motion. And again, it's just kind of feeling things out. It's not supposed to be a huge amount of work, but it does feel like things are waking up and you're looking for those pockets of weakness, tightness, and feeling like you're ready to handle whatever life throws at you when it comes to being able to have a lot of tension in the muscles. So once we're engaged and we're stable, now we move into kind of the meat and potatoes of our workout. And this phase is your proficiency phase. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be working on strength, the proficiency of strength, the skill of strength. And for this phase, we're going to obviously be using something that's pretty heavy to provide a lot of resistance, keeping the repetitions low, but we want to stay away from high levels of fatigue, staying away from failure. because we're trying to improve how good you are at performing the exercise. And it's just a lot harder to do things well when you're really tired and kind of burned out. So for this, we're going to be using our bent over row, and I often recommend using different tools, different exercises and angles for each of these phases, just to kind of cover more ground as far as the stimulus you're creating. So you got a classic barbell bent over row here, and you may want to, especially with weight style training, ramp up to heavier weights, especially if you're going with really low repetitions like doubles and triples. But we're just gonna go with a simple 5x5 here with our bent over row, getting nice and set. The second you start to begin, you should feel like your engagement is improved from the first phase and things are very stable, like my shoulders are packed and locked in from the second phase. And we just get our classic row. And we're not trying to bust out a lot of reps or use a lot of weight. We're trying to use harder techniques. So maybe a little narrower because it's harder. Whenever you're doing grind style approach and you're like, but I can't lift as much weight if I do this harder technique or use the different tempo and stuff. I was like, good, yeah, we want things to be inefficient. I want things to be inefficient to get the numbers down, because that makes it harder, or easier rather, to create an effective stimulus. Because that is, of course, the whole point of grind style training, is to create an effective, powerful stimulus for the adaptations that we're looking for. And usually using less efficient techniques that keep your reps and your weight relatively low are gonna be just an easier way to do that. So we got one set down, we'll set here. Being mindful of all the technical differences from one set to the next, or even one rep to the next. My shoulders down, am I using the same range of motion? How's my engagement throughout? My lats, my traps, my grip, my biceps. Get everything dialed in as tightly as possible. Because again, the goal is not to do a lot, the goal is to do better. So we're gonna get, here we're doing a 5x5, but you wanna do as many sets as you possibly can with a degree of proficiency. And you're gonna terminate this phase once you feel your proficiency is starting to go down. So if I feel good and strong, but then all of a sudden I kind of hit a wall, my technique is faltering and it's kind of like, oh boy, I'm starting to really tire out. Then you're done and you move into the next phase. Now I'm not going too heavy today just because it's been God knows how long since I've done this exercise. So no matter what I do, I'm going to be creating a good stimulus for it, but I probably would be going heavier once I got more comfortable with the technique. So this is just 135 here, but back in the day, 225, 245 was more of my normal when I was doing the bent over row. I probably could get it, but I also have to go lower in order to just be able to talk and perform a video as well. There's always that. And don't forget to rest as needed. Remember that the third tenet of the grind style approach is to use adaptive training. Don't lock yourself into how many sets are you doing or how much rest are you doing and stuff, because these things are always going to be in flux to some degree depending on your resources and your circumstances and your ability to create that stimulus. So different exercises, different rest periods. If you're more tired, more rest. If you're ready to rock and roll, less rest. Give yourself enough rest so that you can attack the next set, but not so much that you're starting to cool down and you're losing your focus and getting distracted. So we'll go just a little bit wider on this last one and get again set. So you could kind of see in that final repetition, my range of motion was a little shorter. I didn't quite get to the belly. Probably if I was doing my own workout for this, not demonstration, I would probably go a little heavier and maybe get 1 or 2 more sets because I got a little more in the tank before it starts to go downhill. But again, once you start to feel like, okay, now things are starting to get harder to maintain the proficiency of the exercise, we have the finisher. And for that, what we're doing is our standard pull downs here, and you want to go in a series that is the opposite of your proficiency. So we're using moderate loads so I can get much more reps, probably about 10, 15, maybe 20. And this time I want to really push to a high degree of fatigue. You're not going to get a lot of these. You should really burn out the muscle in 1, 2, at the most 3 sets. So don't be shy with this. We're not working so much on proficiency now. We're just using the muscles for everything they're worth. And again though, inefficient techniques. We want big range. We want to do things the hard way. You don't want... We'll get a couple half reps here. Okay, ISO finisher. Here we go. 3, 2, done. Oh. You can also use single joint exercises for good finishers, like bicep curls, because that's part of our pull chain, lat pull downs or straight lat pull downs, rear flies, or any other single jointed movement that you want to address a particular muscle to ensure you're working that muscular work capacity and stimulating the hypertrophy you want in that muscle. So at the end of the finisher phase, you should certainly feel like you've got a heck of a pump going on. Maybe compromise technique a little bit to get a couple last repetitions. Like I did towards the end, you could see my shoulder range of motion wasn't really the best. It's kind of nursing a little bit of tightness in the back of my shoulder these days. But don't worry too much about getting it technically perfect or proficient like you did in the previous phase. You're just trying to burn whatever's left in that tension chain out to really create a strong hypertrophy stimulus and leave the workout feeling like you really got some work done. So if you want to explore more about the grind style approach, especially with calisthenics, check out these videos here. Let me know if you have further questions down below. Thank you very much for watching. Be fit and live free.